ready.
All right, I will call to order this meeting of the East Hampton Planning Board for Tuesday, November 15th, 2016. Is there anybody here to speak to anything that is not on the agenda tonight? All right. First, the Planning Board minutes for our meeting on November 1st, 2016. Anybody have any corrections, errors, omissions?
No.
No.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I abstain because I was not present. No A&Rs tonight, Jessica?
Nope.
All right, so our first order is old business with 311 East Street, Mount Thomas Estates, and I am going to recuse myself from this one, so hand it over to Jim.
The applicant would like to come and update us. How are you, gentlemen?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you. Right up there. We're on camera.
Hi, Tom Adamczyk.
And Bob Adams.
At our last meeting, we had two items that were unfinished. One was the raising of the fire hydrant, and the other was the agreement with the homeowners association, which both items have been completed, and we're here to ask for the release.
I saw the picture of the fire hydrant. Did everyone get a chance to see that? That looked appropriate.
I have a picture here if anybody has not gotten it.
Does anyone want to see?
No,
I think we're good with that. And then the other, of course, was making sure that you had the agreement with the homeowners association. I think you were going to get a letter, did you?
Yes, so the agreement, I forwarded it
Yeah.
all to you, so, so the agreement, I've looked at it, I think it's fine, so.
And it has been recorded.
Okay. And I did get a note from you, Jess, that you had extended for 1 month the...
Yes, so Westfield Bank extended the letter of credit for 30 days until December 10th, 2016.
I don't think we have any issues outstanding.
No, not with that.
As long as the homeowners agreed to the conditions.
No.
Is there anyone
Jessica
here
has
that's a
the
homeowner
letter.
that has any comments? No? I think we're looking for a motion to approve the release.
I'll make
for
a
the letter of
motion
credit.
that we approve the release of the Montana State $75,000 letter of credit.
Is there a second? Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstentions? Thank you very much. Sorry to make you come back to
No
this.
problem. Thanks for your help.
Thanks.
Have a good
Yeah,
night.
I'll send you a letter that proves the release, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Hey, he's right. Waiting in the wings.
All right. Moving right along to new business. Cumberland Farms, 221 Northampton Street, a request for a special permit. Someone here to speak to that?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Corridon. I am here on behalf of Thomas Murphy, Attorney Thomas Murphy, who sends his regrets. He had a conflict this evening. He couldn't be here. I'm basically going to just introduce the developer, the engineer, and the traffic engineer for your information, and I'm going to defer to them to tell you about the project and answer any of your questions, but I'm here to help them get through tonight as well. Present is Ross Galloway from First Hartford. He's in the audience. Luke DiStefano from Bowler Engineering is also here. Erin Fredette from McMahon Associates is the traffic engineer, and she's here to address any of your questions about traffic. And Dave Boyle, the owner of the property, is also here for you tonight. And with that, I will hand it over to Luke DiStefano from Bowler Engineering to present the project.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Luke DiStefano with Bowler Engineering, Southborough, Mass. What I'd like to do is quickly walk you through the project and some of the major talking points of what it is Cumberland Farms is proposing. I think this board is probably very familiar with the existing site, which is located at 221 Northampton Street. The site, under its current condition, is just shy of 6.5 acres and is located on the east side of Northampton Street, adjacent to the East Hampton Savings Bank building, which is located just north of this particular piece of land. Under the current condition, the site is vacant, although in the past the site was previously developed, if I understand correctly, as a residential structure which was raised sometime in the not too distant past, as well as recently utilized for a storage facility for materials associated with some Mass DOT work that was done. The site is basically flat, with the exception of the rear portion or the eastern side of the site, which slopes off pretty considerably towards Industrial Drive and some of the existing businesses located off to the east. Under the proposed condition, if lucky enough to get the various permits and approvals required, Cumberland Farms is looking to purchase and redevelop about an 84,000 square foot piece of property, or just shy of 2 acres, on the northern piece of that larger 6.5 acre parcel. The site would ultimately be developed with a 4,786 square foot Cumberland Farms convenience store located in the rear center of the property, as you can see, or hopefully can see on the rendering to my left. The building itself will be serviced by 35 parking spaces. Under current zoning, the structure of this size would be required to have 24, although for a building like this, Cumberland Farms, when they have the ability, would like to have a few more parking spaces, so they're proposing 35, the majority of which would be, or all of which would be, in the front of the building, and then on the southern side or the right side of the building if you're facing the building from Northampton Street. The site would also contain 6 multi-product gasoline dispensers situated beneath a 48-foot by 100-foot wide area canopy. Under maximum circumstances, because each dispenser can fuel off of either side, you would have the maximum ability to fuel 12 vehicles at any one given time, with the 6 multi-product dispensers being proposed. Those dispensers would be serviced by 2 20,000-gallon double-wall fiberglass underground storage tanks located to the south side of the canopy. The property itself would be serviced by 2 full movement curb cuts along Northampton Street that would be basically an in and an out at both of the curb cuts. Under the proposed condition, we are also proposing some significant enhancements to the landscaping. If you've been to that piece or that portion of the property, under its current condition, it's basically gravel and some dirt. Cumberland Farms is looking to enhance what's out there with a well-seeded and well-landscaped appearance, as you can see, which would basically provide landscaping buffers on all 3 sides, or all 4 sides of the property, including Northampton Street. Stormwater is a primary concern. We are located adjacent to a wetland area, which is located just off the property to the north, and a small portion of which exists along the eastern side of the property. So we understand that stormwater is a primary focus, not only of the Conservation Commission, who we appeared before last evening, but the Planning Board as well. So we've taken significant steps to not only comply with the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Guidelines, but to provide a system that we feel will enhance the stormwater exiting the property. Under its existing condition, stormwater effectively sheet flows untreated and unchecked across the property from west to east and ultimately into the wetland area located off the property or to the east. Under the proposed condition, runoff from all paved portions of the property is proposed to be collected via a series of deep sump catch basins with oil water hoods or drainage systems located on the canopy in the building. That runoff will then be conveyed via a series of pipes to a proprietary stormwater quality unit prior to being discharged into a infiltration basin located on the east or rear portion of the lot. We will then infiltrate stormwater back into the groundwater. There are certain instances where that pond will overflow, but ultimately at the end of the day, runoff exiting the property will be done so under all design storms, including the 100-year, at a much lesser rate than as it is today. And the runoff from the property under the proposed condition will also be considered clean runoff because of the methods we are implementing, the best management practices to treat that runoff prior to it being discharged into the infiltration basin. Utilities are all available to the site and will all be provided underground. The majority of our utilities will be connected back into Northampton Street, with the exception of sanitary sewer. There is no public sanitary sewer located immediately in front of the building, so we are proposing to connect via a cross-country connection that runs to the southeast corner of the lot where there is existing municipal sewer. Now, we are aware, based on some conversations held with the abutter after last night's Conservation Commission, that there may be an option for a connection to a sanitary sewer opposite our site along Northampton Street. That's something we will explore, but as of right now, the plan is to connect to the existing municipal sewer located on the southeast corner of the overall 6-acre parcel. The only other thing that I'd like to talk about that we feel is a big improvement, not over existing conditions, but to the site and to developments like this in general, is the lighting. I think we're all used to seeing sites where the lighting it's obscene, it creates halo, it casts glare onto abutting properties or onto the adjacent rights-of-way. With today's lighting technologies, that doesn't happen, and if you've had the ability to see not only Cumberland Farms, but any newer retail development where a good solid lighting design was put in place, the lighting at these facilities are 100% full cutoff fixtures. They're designed to put the light where we want it, which is in the areas where you have traffic and pedestrian access, but not onto adjacent properties or adjacent rights-of-way. If you've had an opportunity to review the set of plans that we provided, which includes a lighting plan, you'll see that the lighting design does exactly that. It contains the entire lighting for the property within the Cumberland Farms property and not onto abutting properties or Northampton Street. And with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, or I can turn it over to Aaron, who can speak a little bit to traffic.
I have one. The two things that you haven't mentioned yet are the handicap parking and the snow removal.
Sure, we are required to have 2 handicap parking spaces, which we do. They're located immediately in front of the building. And snow storage, we are a little bit hampered because we do have the wetland buffer area that takes a portion of the northern side of the site, but we have proposed 2 fairly large areas for snow storage located basically in this section of the property here. And similar to what they do at most locations, because we are in New England, you do have instances where you have significant snowfalls on these relatively small sites. If snow storage ever becomes an issue where it's blocking parking, blocking visibility, impeding circulation, Cumberland Farms will have no issue removing the snow from the property.
And what, you're going to have blacktop for your parking, and
Correct. Asphalt.
what kind of, are you going to be using salt, sand, or
I'm sorry?
are you going to be using salt or sand or whatever for snow?
Traditionally sand. I don't know what Cumberland Farms uses, but they'll have a typical New England ice melt.
Okay.
There's a tremendous amount of information, in
Yeah.
this, and I feel as if we're, obligated to go through some of this so that everyone else knows, the folks on the camera and the folks here. I have to say that it's well put together, and as a result, I have no questions, from things like lighting to covering 0.71 whatever acres with asphalt, to the location and quality of the tanks, to, the signage. You have a whole lot of different approval process you've got to get through to make this happen. And I heard too that there's a site visit coming up. Is that correct?
Right, so the Conservation Commission last night set a site visit for Saturday morning at 8 a.m. The planning board is welcome to attend to that site visit as well, if you feel the need to.
How do you want to proceed?
Well, and we can move on to the other speaker. If people don't have questions, we can always come back and raise them if we need to.
Yeah. we can-
Thank you.
Good evening. Again, for the record, my name's Erin Fredette. I'm a project manager with McMahon Associates, the traffic engineer on the project. So I can really quickly go through the study that we pulled together as part of this project, but I'd be happy to go into any additional detail or answer any questions that the board may have. We start off by establishing a study area, which in this case is the 2 proposed project site driveways at Northampton Street. We conduct counts during the weekday morning and the weekday afternoon peak periods. We do those 2 time periods because they tend to be the times of day when the on-site traffic and the adjacent street traffic are the highest, and so it presents a almost worst-case scenario for a typical day, and that's what our analysis documents, so that during other times of the day we would expect the operations to be even better than what we're showing in our study, but wanted to make sure that we captured that commuter peak when the traffic volumes tend to be higher. Once we do those counts, we establish a peak hour and establish our 2016 existing year traffic volumes. We then project those out into the future 7 years, which is industry standard, to kind of capture any regional growth that may be happening in the area. We utilize a 1% background growth rate established in conjunction with the planning department in order to establish that. Which gives us our 2023 no-bill traffic volumes, essentially our future year traffic volumes without the proposed project, and is that baseline against which we can compare our future year with the project. In order to establish the number of trips we would expect to be associated with the proposed project, we utilize a resource called the Trip Generation Manual, which is produced by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE. It's industry standard, and for this particular land use, we utilize the land use code convenience market with gas station, and we look at the data points provided by IT for that land use and are able to estimate the number of trips associated with this particular project based on its size relative to all the other data points that we look at. In this case, we would expect during the weekday morning peak hour approximately 36 new vehicles to be added to the roadway network, and approximately 42 new vehicles to be added during the weekday afternoon peak hour. We then take those vehicle trips, we distribute them onto the adjacent roadways based on existing travel patterns, and add them to that baseline, those baseline traffic volumes I talked about previously, which results in our future year with project traffic volumes. So once we have those, we then conduct a capacity analysis, which tells us how those driveways are expected to operate, and based on that analysis, we identified that the driveways would operate at level of service D, which there's a rating system from A to F, A being the best, F being the worst. Level of service D is definitely acceptable for more developed areas like this section along Route 10, and during the weekday.
By best and worst?
So a level of service A is you don't have to wait at all, you're just cruising right through. Level of service F is you have to wait and for an unsignalized intersection 50 seconds or more to get out. So level of service D is probably not what you were striving for in school, but from a traffic perspective is what we would consider acceptable. And that's during the weekday afternoon peak hour. During the weekday morning peak hour, we're at level of service C. And as I said, those are the 2 peak hours where traffic is at its worst on a typical day. Other times of day, we would expect those to operate much better. Additionally, we don't expect any queuing on site. Our analysis shows that during those peak hours, we would only see maybe 1, maybe 2 vehicles queued up. And the way the site is laid out, there is plenty of room for that vehicle to queue, or vehicle or two to queue without impeding circulation on site, and therefore minimizing the impact on Route 10 itself. We also conduct a safety analysis to make sure that the driveways will operate safely. We look at what we call sight distance, which is essentially the ability of vehicles to see each other on the roadway. So people on Route 10, people in the site, and how they can see each other. And based on the posted speed limit on Route 10 and the available sight distance at each of the proposed site driveways, we exceed the required minimums for sight distance at both of those locations. So based on our capacity analysis and that safety analysis, we would expect the project site driveways to operate safely and efficiently with minimal impact to vehicles traveling on Route 10. With that, I know that was probably more than anticipated, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions, go into any more detail.
So a couple questions. I guess first of all, I assume the applicants have gotten the peer review, but only a couple hours ago probably. So I assume there isn't a real substantive response to those issues, or not yet?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We just received that a couple hours ago, so we really haven't had time to digest.
I read it on my phone myself, so I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that that was...
And Tom Hogan is here if you need to ask him any questions about
Okay.
the document.
Well, so I mean, I guess that's one reason to sort of put that part of the discussion off maybe until further hearing, so we can have a chance to get a response on those issues and also the site visit. But one of the things that's in here that I don't know if you've discussed, and I don't know who's best to answer it, but there's a request to vary from the requirement of there being one entrance, one exit, and have two entrance egress on the site. Can you explain a little bit about why you want to do that, and what kind of analysis you might have done for the alternative if it were to comply with the bylaws, if you've looked at that at all?
Sure, yeah. So the reason for the two full access driveways is primarily for fuel or tanker circulation. As it's currently laid out, the fuel tanker would enter from the south at the southern side driveway, enter to where the fueling, the fuel tanks are, circulate around the pumps, and then exit back onto Route 10 towards the south. And we really need both of those driveways for the fuel tanker to be able to complete that movement. Additionally, Route 10 is owned and maintained by Mass DOT. So if we are able to get all of our local approvals prior to construction, we would require to apply to Mass DOT for a permit because we'd be altering their layout. And in order to get that, we would have to supply our site plans to them for full review to make sure they're on board with whatever we're proposing out here. We've reached out to them for a preliminary review, even though they typically don't review things until the whole local process is wrapped up. We reached out to them to make sure that they would be okay with this two driveway full access configuration, and they did offer some very minor tweaks to the site plan, but overall we're okay with the access because they also have an interest in providing safe operations on their roadways.
So I get why you need the two driveways. I'm still not sure why they both need to be entrance and exit. Couldn't you simply come in on the south side like you described and come out on the north side, or is there another reason why it's...
Yeah, I mean, overall, you want to be able to distribute some of your exiting traffic. If everybody is at one single driveway, that one, maybe two-car queue that I talked about gets to be a little bit longer. And when it gets to be a little bit longer, maybe on-site circulation isn't as great. And if on-site circulation isn't as great, maybe cars trying to get in isn't as great, and then maybe you start to impact Route 10. So the two separate driveways really make for that more efficient operation on-site, which in effect keeps Route 10 clear and operating safely.
So it's safer is what you're saying?
Certainly, yes. The two driveways definitely provides like that. It provides an opportunity to minimize the impact to Route 10 and vehicles slowing and stopping on Route 10, which for, the speed limit out there is 45 miles per hour, which isn't insignificant, and so you want to kind of minimize vehicles that might be stopping in the roadway because of those circulation issues.
I think you're also, there's the traffic light, and a lot of times, at certain times of the day, you can actually see from that traffic light backing past the bank and going down. So that's gonna, at certain times, hamper people going in and out, at least that part of it, onto Northampton Street. So it would, I guess, behoove the person to go off to the other side.
Sure, and that's another thing is with these types of land uses, convenience, as in the name, is how people utilize them. If a particular driveway isn't convenient because, say, the driveway is blocked by a brief queue or something like that, they do have the opportunity to utilize the other driveway that's further away and get out onto the site, again, aiding in that on-site circulation.
That's all I have. I have to look at it again.
Anybody else have any other traffic-related questions?
I mean, there's a discussion here about the landscaping being put back for safety so it doesn't block, you know, visibility as you're talking about, but it seems like it's all in line with where it needs to be, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can hold off on all that stuff and wait till we
Yeah.
get a response to figure out what that is. Do you have anything on the
Do you
traffic?
know offhand the approximate distance between the two driveways that you're planning?
I don't know off the top of my head. Do you know? I can scale them up.
About 100 feet.
Yeah, that seems about right. And given the distance between, we do find that that's a safe distance, that they're not too close together, and it provides the opportunity that when there is a gap on Route 10, multiple cars can take that gap. Instead of two cars being lined up behind each other, having to wait for multiple gaps, they can, say, need to take a left out, they can take them out simultaneously, and it's, again, a more efficient use of time on Route 10.
The upper image there shows white hash lines on the two driveway entrances. Are those pedestrian crosswalks? Is that what's
Correct.
trying?
Yes.
I don't quite recall, to be honest, last time I drove by, but there isn't sidewalk there currently, right?
There is.
There is sidewalk.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Providing that access across the proposed driveways.
All right, is there anyone else?
Chairman, we don't have any more speakers, but we'd entertain any questions. Otherwise, we would look forward to the site view and revisiting.
Does anyone have any questions at this point?
No, I have kind of go through all this.
Is there anybody else here who has any comments on this project, either for or against, or questions for the applicants at this point? Recognizing that we're going to continue this hearing, I think, to a later date, and there'll be further opportunity then.
Just a couple of quick questions.
Can you come up to the podium, JP? I'm sorry. You should know better.
Thank you. JP Kwasinski, City Councilor, East Hampton. I just had a couple of quick questions about the site. I didn't have a chance to review the plan. I understood that you presented it. How close are you to the traffic light in terms of number of feet? I'm thinking of the signalization at O'Neill Street. Just wondering about the distance there and how that traffic flow coming from Northampton to the south just would impact, you know, if 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 cars back up at that light. Sometimes there's 20, and then they want to move forward, and how that all fits in with your plans to have 1 or 2 entrances, or 2 entrances with each having their own exits and entrances. So, come on. Please, let's share.
Sure. So the signal is far enough away that we didn't include it in our study area, because what happens oftentimes with these types of land uses is that the vehicles that are utilizing the gas station and the convenience store are already on Route 10. Not many people are making specific trips from their house to the gas station and back home again. It's much more, as I was saying earlier, it's a convenience-based market. And so because of that, we didn't include that adjacent signal. And due to based on the volumes that we saw on Route 10 in front of our site, we wouldn't expect that queue from the signal would back up regularly enough to hamper the operations of the proposed driveways. And again, with the 2 proposed driveways, if it does happen to back up during a peak time, or in that off chance that it does, there are multiple options in order to exit onto Northampton Street.
Okay.
So.
I just would say on Thursday and Friday nights,
Okay.
they can back up 30 cars deep, 35, 40 cars deep. Closer to town, I'm not sure on O'Neill Street if it's that deep, but I think it's pretty deep. And I don't know, just to review that in terms of your analysis, I think would be important, because you want to have traffic flowing smoothly all the time.
Certainly, and I think even if there is a queue on Northampton Street, we wouldn't expect it to linger for, the whole peak hour or the whole peak period. in which case there would be opportunities for those vehicles to exit.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that, yeah.
Right, and
I
so,
think it
and
would.
the light, and what the light does is, we call it metering, it gives an opportunity, it breaks traffic up so that it gives opportunity to those vehicles, on the site being able to get out.
I was just thinking of folks making the left turn as they head south,
Sure.
and how that would back up everything.
Yeah, and I think the number of times that would happen would be on the more minimal side, and providing that more southern driveway would alleviate that queuing, or the ability for those vehicles to get out.
I would
to
hope
the
so. I
left.
would love to see the project here in our community. I think it would help our tax base. So I certainly would speak in favor in that regard. The other question I had was regarding the soil, if there was any soil studies here. I know, I'd understood there was a deep clay depth here as the site. Is that true?
We've done both. We've had geotechnical consultants look at the soil. We've had environmental consultants look at the soil. And we've done our own on-site soil evaluation. And basically what we found is that the site does have a fair amount of fill. My understanding is that there are some clay-type soils, but they're deep enough to where they're not going to impact the proposed development. Obviously, we will have the appropriate engineers design the foundation and whatnot to be consistent with the types of soils that are there.
I was just looking back and wondering, I think some of the clay for the landfill cap came from this area, maybe not the specific site, but from the general area, and I didn't know how all that might have affected your plans in any way.
Shouldn't have any
I don't
effect.
think it should, but just looking way back to the time when the landfill cap was drawn from this area. I did have one other comment, thought, because I'm certainly pleased to see the business come here, add to the tax base. What I was thinking about was whether we could fast forward to a time when power is out. I don't know if you have any plans for having emergency generator service or emergency service to the site. Was that at all under consideration by your organization?
I don't believe there's a generator proposed today, but it's definitely something we can take back to Cumberland Farms.
Yeah.
I live in the area, so I certainly know winters can be pretty rough. Wasn't that long ago when it was snowing in October, and I was without power for 8 days. So, trust me, I know.
I was going to bring that up and say, just, can you remember the time? It'll never happen. We only have a day or a half a day where we're without power. 8 days for some of us, many of us 4 days. It would be really wonderful to have a generator here at this site. Now, I understand it's a little more, there's some costs involved with that. And so I talked with MEMA this week, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, and asked them what was going on in the area regarding gasoline and emergency generators. And they said, well, you know, we think what it really takes is a switch, emergency transfer power switch that would enable the station to switch from the grid to a generator. And I'm not a cost analysis person, so I don't know, but their thought was it would be about $3,000 to $4,000 to install at the time of construction this emergency transfer switch. Now that's a little bit of money, and I'm sure there are other costs involved, but if you could consider that, I think that would be great for our community, for our region. I understand there are only 90 stations in Massachusetts that have emergency generator possibilities of the 2,200 stations in Massachusetts. And many of those are on the turnpike. Because we can go to Blandford or to Ludlow to get gas, but that's quite a trip. So it would be something, I think, to put on the table and to consider as you move forward and in your negotiations. Chet, did you?
No, I was just thinking that with the generator at the time of building, it would also be a safety factor, not only for the people at that point, but anybody trying to come in and out. And you know that someone's going to try something.
To come in and out.
So, you're right. So I believe that the emergency lighting at the pumps and also in the building itself.
Well, I think on as a minimum standard, I think Florida has a law that requires gas stations, at least many of their gas stations, to have emergency generators. They're very forward-looking. New Jersey has considered this, and so has New York. One of the things, the minimum you have a little bit of lighting, point-of-sale cash registers, something to run the pumps, and something to run the fire suppression system. Not your entire store, because it will raise the cost tremendously to have the refrigeration systems and everything else be included. But minimal service, I think, would be something that could be a real boon to our community. Whether, here's what just one other thing. If it does get expensive, I think the public would be willing to pay a premium to have such a service, to a forward-looking company coming to our community and put in the generator. If, for example, it was $1 more a gallon to get the gas rather than going to Blandford or to going to Ludlow, in an emergency, I think people would look to that and say, yeah, this is pretty good. We can go in our own community and have gas.
You know, I do like the idea, and my thought would be that in that kind of a situation, if you're the only guy in town that's able to pump gas and serve hot snacks and coffee and have fresh, well, refrigerated convenience-type food items there in the store, then you're going to do gangbuster business.
You're going to do gangbuster
You know,
business.
so I don't think there's any reason to scalp the price.
I'm for keeping prices down, and I think having an additional gas station would be helpful to us in that regard. So, thank you very much for your consideration on that. And I understand you'll take that back and come back.
Blind or whatever it was.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was almost
you.
5 times the price.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? All right, does anybody on the board have any comments or questions, or do we want to continue this until we have a response on the traffic stuff and the other issues here?
Agreed. I motion to continue.
Hold on.
Wait a
Sorry.
minute, how long does the applicant feel that they need to respond to the letter that was submitted by the engineering peer review team?
I guess when are the next hearings that would be available?
2 weeks.
I mean, at this point, I'd like to continue it for the 2 weeks.
It's
Hold
actually
on,
more
wait a
than
minute,
that,
it's
right?
actually one
It's
more
3
than
weeks.
that, because we have a 5th Tuesday in December. Hold on.
Right.
So it'll be December
It
6th.
would be December 6th.
December 6th?
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be enough time, and we would have the option, if need be, to push it out further, if for some reason there were comments we couldn't address in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I motion to continue the Cumberland Farms 221 Northampton Street request for special permit to December 6th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition, abstentions? All right.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you then. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
All right. You guys got any administrative items that have popped up? All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn then?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
All in favor? Oh, I need a second first.
What?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.